Yes, every single Piggy map besides Breakout, but we're going to be ranking every main Piggy chapter map. So for those of you who know, I did make a Piggy map rating about a year ago, but today I want to do it again since pretty much the Piggy Book 2 is pretty much finished right now. So even though this video should have been uploaded like a long time ago, but that's besides the point. I'm going to be rating them all right now in this video, so fair warning, I am not going to include the flashback chapters considering those are just remakes of other maps, and also the breakout chapter is not going to be included since that is also a flashback, and I'm not really going to count those types of maps. And for fair warning, my opinions for some maps have definitely changed since the last time I rated these maps. But without further ado, let's get right on into it. Number 25, Carnival. Now, a lot of people would consider Gallery to be the worst, but I don't see the case in that. Carnival is an okay map to say the least. It's pretty much just a giant square with a giant carnival with a giant tent in the middle. They have a few shared parts, like you could find wrenches for like a little roller coaster. The design of the map is actually pretty cool, and I will say the reason why this is so low is because it's pretty easy for a chapter 8 map. If this was a little bit more difficult, then I would definitely consider this thing higher on the list. But other than that, this map is pretty okay to say the least. Number 24, Gallery. Now, Gallery, I placed this above Carnival for more reason in particular. And that is because it's pretty fair for both player and Piggy. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would say that it's a lot of close corners, but that's the main idea. There are pretty much multiple routes to go when you're the player or Piggy. And I will say the stair part is actually pretty annoying once a pig places a trap up there, but there are many ways to pretty much avoid that for camping piggies. But if you really know what you're doing, the Gallery map is actually a pretty easy map for chapter 3. Number 23, House, the map that started it all. Now, House is definitely very generic in my opinion, but I mean, it's a good map to start off. Now, House is definitely basic. You start off in a bedroom. There are definitely a couple hallways. They have a main room, and the spacing of the entire map in general is pretty fair. It's definitely pretty fair for both player and bot, or player and Piggy. But other than that, this map is really generic as it is. The basement part of the house is definitely pretty cool with a lower garage area, and there are definitely some alternate routes to the house to where you can try to escape Piggy, or there are definitely some good spots to where you can place traps as well. But all I'm saying is that this house is pretty okay for a starter map, but it really doesn't really top the other ones. Number 22, Mall. Now, Mall it's really just a big square. That's really all this map really is, technically. But I mean, coming after chapter 9, as you all know, I mean, I think the devs were really on to like more city-like maps so far. But Mall is just pretty disappointing, you know? Like, I definitely think that they could have done way better with the mall, like make it pretty much a lot bigger, or I wouldn't say much bigger, but like not just a big square like it is. But I will say some positives, that there are definitely some cool stores that you can do, and there are definitely some cool spots to where you can go into, like the vent section. The vent section is pretty cool, especially with the mouse to prevent the players from camping in there. That's a good addition. And I will say, this is the only map that has the crowbar. In the other 25 maps, this is the only map to include a crowbar. And this is also the map to where Piggy collabed with Jailbreak with a little vault in that room. I think that is pretty cool. Number 21, School. Same thing as the mall map. It's basically just a giant square, but not the entire map in general. I will say it's basically split up into 2 squares, but I mean it's pretty average. I mean, school is pretty fun. I like school, but the only thing that really brings it down is just a little bit of backtracking. Even though some maps definitely suffer the exact same thing, but you have to go down the stairs, and that spot is just a little annoying because the pig can really just camp there the entire game, and placing a trap there is pretty hard to avoid. But I mean, if you're an expert player like myself, you will know that you can basically jump around that trap. It really depends of which trap it is, but majority is pretty hard to get down to the basement if you have like the last item to open up the final door. But I will say it's not all that bad with a couple of classrooms here and there, and it's pretty spacious. But comparing to every other map, this map is as average as it gets. Number 20, plants. Now, I know what y'all are thinking. Why did I have this at the S rank in my last Piggy rating video? But since I've recently played this, my opinion's totally changed. Plant is just a big open area with just a few rooms. It's nothing really cool or special or stuff like that. For a final chapter, I mean, it's not really difficult at all. It basically suffers the exact same difficulty base as Carnival. Like, the plant really isn't that difficult. That's all I'm going to say. And I will say the backtracking in this map is pretty bare bones, but it's not all that bad considering you can go into 2 other rooms and that there are definitely some puzzles you need to solve, which is actually pretty cool in my opinion. But then once you open up the dynamite, stuff really does to get pretty interesting with the second half of Plant. But I mean, it's pretty much the same thing, because once you open up the second area, it's basically previous chapters just shoring up into one singular room. And that's pretty much all I have to say for Plant. But for a final chapter, for the story wise it's good, but for map wise it's just average. Not even average, it's kind of disappointing. Number 19, Station. Now, after recently playing this map, I actually had a lot of fun with this recently, but after recently playing this map, I realized what the problem was. The only problem with this map is that it's just a little bit too many. It's a lot of corridors, you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of corridors to where pig can camp, and that especially for the final exit. Same thing as the school map, the pig can really just camp there and place multiple traps around that area, and then you won't be able to get into the final exit. But I'm not going to let that only part suffer. I'm not going to let that part only bring Station this far down on the list. I mean, for Chapter 2 map, it's actually really cool in my opinion. And I really like playing this map sometimes. But I do wish that Station could be just a little bit more thoughtful about how many hallways you have to go through. Number 18, Forest. Now, again, some people will have this map at the bottom of the list too, which I definitely understand their point. Now, Forest is pretty much one of the most open maps in Piggy ever, but I mean, it's pretty fair to both player and bot. If you're a very smart Piggy player, you would know where to place your traps, and for that reason alone, I can see why people have this so low on their list, is because it's way too open, which I actually agree with. Number 17, Docks. The first chapter, the first book 2 map on this list. Now, the reason why I have Docks pretty low against the other Piggy maps in book 2 is because it's pretty small. I mean, there are definitely some cool rooms, like they have a little temple area underground, but other than that, it's pretty small in my opinion. For a chapter 9 map, I will say the design of it is really cool. Not gonna lie about that. But gameplay wise, it's it's a little disappointing because I really feel like they could have done way more in here. Kind of like Port from chapter 7. They could have done that a little bit, but like make it more of a harbor instead of just a little building that you can go through with just a bunch of square routes and a little bit of a outdoor section at the end. But gameplay wise, this map is actually pretty cool. I do like it for a docks map. Number 16, Winter Holiday. Now this map, like as I said before, I really don't call this as this is not a flashback or part of the main game, but it is one of the bonus chapters, I like to say. Now Winter Holiday only appears in the winter updates, and it's pretty I wouldn't say average, but honestly it's a very chill map. Like honestly one of the first snowy maps that PIGGY has ever released actually. And it's pretty cool that they have a huge cabin in the middle of the map. They got two sides, one filled with a hedge maze and the other filled with a little, I like to call it like a little bit of an ice fortress. There are some things that you can do, and once you play this map there's a little bit of a snowstorm or a snow breeze going on outside, and it dies down the further you play. I like that. I like that variation to this map. I really like that little bit of a weather change. But the gameplay of this map is different, that you have to collect presents and bring them to a tree, and once you get them all, you win the game. It's very different from the other ones, since even though regarding plan you don't have to escape from anywhere, but in Winter Holiday you don't do the same thing. You don't escape either, you just do stuff to complete. It's kind of like a huge quest. Number 15, Temple. Now Temple is pretty meh, to say the least. I mean, once you think of Temple, you think you're going to be going into like a huge hallway filled with stone, artifacts and stuff like that. It's not exactly what you get here, but it's definitely close to. Now Temple is not really big in my opinion. It's mostly just hallways here and there. There are pretty much a lot of dead ends. Not really a lot, but there are definitely some dead ends. But I definitely think that they could have done better with space, and they could have added like a huge room filled like with a secret artifact, and yet if they place a certain artifact in the middle, the floor like goes down a level, and yet there's a whole nother area. They could have done that in this map, but instead they didn't. Temple is pretty small and average, kind of like Gallery, to where there's just really nothing but hallways everywhere. But on a positive side, it's actually honestly one of the most fair maps in book 2 for both player and bot. Like there are good places to escape PIGGY, and there are actually a lot of good places to place traps. Number 14, City. Now City, it's really just two big buildings and just a street hanging around. And for player and bot, it's honestly really balanced. And I really like that, because in both buildings there are definitely some good ways to escape and place traps. But for design wise, I do like the background with all the different buildings everywhere. And in this map you have to escape to a safe place. But both buildings are pretty cool. One is really filled with hotel rooms, and the other one is really filled with offices, which is actually pretty cool. And there's this one small building that you have to place dynamite down, which is actually, it's really cool for a chapter 9 map, because you would think that you would be going through a lot more streets, but I could definitely see why, because this was definitely only book 1. I mean, it's book one maps are definitely not as good as book 2 when it comes to design wise. Number 13, Store. Now Store, I like to call Store is kind of like Gallery in a way, if you like to say that. But the only reason why I have it this far up the list is because it's not really that difficult for a chapter 2 map, because there are many ways that you can take, and that they have an actually big area. I like the design because the devs actually thought about where players can escape and where can PIGGY place his traps. It's actually really cool. This is actually a very good thought out map in my opinion. And I like that about the devs because they were actually thinking about how to make the gameplay fair for both people. I do like the attention to detail in this map. It's so nice. It's so nice. It got many cash registers. It's pretty cool. But no wonder it's called Store for a reason. And I also want to point out is that I have a feeling that Store is basically on the other side of the Metro map that we were in Book 1. Number 12, Safe Place. Now, I can definitely see why this is. I think people hate this map because there are just too many stairs and all that, but I'm not going to be biased. The reason why Safe Place is number 12 on this list is because it's actually very well designed, and I've always wanted to see what was inside the safe place, given that we were given teasers about it sometimes, but yet we finally get to experience it. Now, regardless of the stairs situation, the rooms that you actually go in are actually really thought out. Like, the devs didn't need to do all of these little details, but they did it anyways. They made the safe place look like a place to where a lot of people can live in, and I really love the attention to detail on that. But a little downside is that once you get to the stairs section, the bot really doesn't make that much noise, given that you really have to listen to where the bot is going to be at so that you don't die. And there is a lot of backtracking in this map, since you have to go back up the stairs for certain items, but as long as you have a good team that knows what they're doing, you should be good to go. Number 11, Ship. Now, Ship is definitely chapter 8 of book 2, and this is basically the map that we were traveling to get to the other side of the world. And Ship is okay to say the least, given that it's really filled with corridors and all that, but they definitely have some spacious rooms to where you can't avoid Piggy. And for Piggy, there are definitely a lot of places to where they can place good traps to capture the player. And I do like the upstairs section to where you actually need to find a code that you can put in. I think this is the very first chapter to where you actually had to put in a color coordinated code. It's actually very well attention to detail, and that pretty much ups the difficulty. Given that Carnival was chapter 8 and it was pretty easy, Ship really isn't that hard either, and the bot in Ship is actually pretty fast, so you really need to watch your step to where you're actually on the ship. Number 10, Hospital. Hospital is actually one of my favorite maps to date because there is so much room and so many rooms itself that you can go in, but sometimes you have to be careful to where you're going because you can run into some dead ends if you don't open the door with the right key card. But other than that, this map is pretty much just a square. It's not all that bad because there are definitely some rooms that you can use to escape Piggy with the green keycard door with the vent inside. You can definitely use that to your advantage to escape Piggy, and yet the rooms itself are actually really well thought out, that once you go in there, it's not like you're completely trapped. You can definitely avoid Piggy if you are very smart enough. And well, a little bit of a downside is that the exit is filled with a plank, and yet the Piggy can definitely place traps there, and yet he can basically camp there the whole game, and yet getting into the exit door will definitely be pretty difficult without sacrificing someone. But other than that, unless you have the weapon, I don't think the actual gun is in this level, I don't remember. But once you play pretty smart and give the bunny the carrot, you should be good to go. Number 9, Sewers. Now, Sewers is actually pretty much one of the scarier chapters, given that the bot is a freaking alligator, and he makes a very loud noise. But other than that, the sewer map itself is honestly just another giant square. But we're not going to base every map about the entire plane layout. But the design of this map is actually really cool. There are some stuff that you really need to do to open up more parts of the map, which I love maps that do that, because it gives you an incentive to actually work together to explore more parts of the map itself. But the design wise is really cool. It really gives off that sewer vibe, in that it's really quiet. You can hear the machines in the background. It really gives off that vibe. Number 8, Refinery. Now, given that this is a building in the middle of nowhere, Mini Toon and the devs were not playing around. Now, the Refinery is pretty much a very big map, because this map actually does take some time to beat, considering that it's pretty long in my defense. But I will say something funny is that the stairs here were fixed. The stairs here were fixed in the distraction part, the distraction remake of the Refinery, but the original still didn't get that treatment. But other than that, this map is actually really cool. Again, just like sewers, you have to explore more parts of the map, and the deeper you get into it, the bigger the map, the bigger the Refinery seems to be, because you have to do so much to get to the exit to save Zizzy. And I given that it's pretty cool, and the difficulty in here rises pretty drastically, since you have to watch out for bots so that they don't chase you around the map, so that you don't have extra people chasing you along the way. But other than that, unless you are pretty sneaky, I would say, you should be good and completing a chapter to save Zizzy. Number 7, Port. Now, Port is basically like City in a way. It's basically like City Part 2, given that you have to go into two large buildings that have a lot of stuff to do. Well, I wouldn't say a huge lot, but given this chapter, it's pretty different. That you have to really find batteries to put inside the lighthouse, so that the lighthouse could illuminate light for a ship to come to you for the ship map in chapter 8, which is the next chapter. And that the buildings itself is actually really well designed. I will say it's really pretty cramped, since you have to use a board to get to a building, and you have to do a lot of stuff to clear paths for certain hallways that you have to go through, which is actually pretty great. For a port map. And on the streets itself, I do kind of like how there's like a lot of cars just scattered all over the place. It really gives off that vibe, since we're still considered in an infected world. It really gives off that port vibe, nonetheless, with a giant lighthouse smack dab in the middle. Number 6, Metro. Honestly, this map was a really fun one for me. Once it first came out, I used to play this game a lot back in the days. But Metro is a really cool map, considering that there are so many routes to take. I wouldn't say like so many, but like there are like, this map is really connected. Like, it's pretty much impossible to find a dead end in this map. And yet it's pretty much, honestly, one of the best balanced maps out there to date for both player and bot. Like, for player, there are multiple routes that you can go to avoid the bot or player, and for Piggy, there are definitely, again, a lot of places to place traps. But as long as you know what you're doing as player, it's pretty easy to avoid any traps. And for Piggy, as long as you know what you're doing, it's okay that you can I would highly recommend black hole traps for this map, considering those are actually one of the best ones in my opinion. But if you use other traps, that's fine. But regardless of that, Metro itself is just a cool map, because it really does give off that Metro vibe. And we all know what's behind that door over there. I think it's store. Number 5, Camp. Honestly, this map is definitely just like Outpost, but just in the winter state. But this map, it really does give off that, military vibe, just like Outpost again. But I mean, this map is actually pretty cool in a way. I do like how you can go underground. Like you can go underground and like there's a huge grid section, and yet you have to watch out for planks of wood so that you don't fall over. And you can use this rope to swing across. That's actually really cool, considering that there's also an alternate route to where if Piggy placed a trap there, you wouldn't even have to worry about it, since you can just place a rope over there so that you could just swing across. And yet, there are multiple buildings that you can go through to find certain items so that you can escape the map. And you have to be careful with the bot, because I think he has a little bit of a hitbox. And also in this map, you have to watch out for other bots, because they are hidden in the snow, and you just gotta be careful to avoid them, which actually spices up this difficulty, since some of the bots really can cut you off or trap you in the building. So you really need to prepare yourself and just be careful in this map. Number 4, Outpost. Given that I've said Outpost a couple of times, this is actually my favorite map in Book 1. Now Outpost itself, the difficulty is pretty bare bones. Now the bots, however, that just roam around in just one spot, which are the pigs, which Zizzy actually puts in work in trying to defeat them all, you as the player have to go around this entire map to try to open this huge door to the plant. But for the map itself, I really like how it's so spacious in that there are multiple ways you can go. You can go up in a tight bridge or look over. I just like that view. I just like the view right here. And yet there are definitely a couple or a few buildings that you can go in that you need to unlock so that you can get more items to escape. I really like the one with the stairs. and the one with the kitchen. That is actually really good attention to detail. I'm really liking the detail of this map, and you also get to not drive a tank, but you get to fuel it to open up a gate, or no, break through a gate, and to go into another building. I feel like this map is just really thought out, and honestly one of the best Book 1 chapters to date. Number 3, Lab. As a finale of the Book 2 chapter, this is actually one of the best maps actually, because not only does it have a part 2 like the plant does, I feel like Minitoon and the other people who created this map was really thinking about just making it way better than the plant. Now you start off in just a hallway, and actually this map is basically just squares, or basically it's just hallways. There really isn't like a huge room just like Plant did, but it did have a little bit of a open room to where you can jump down to where you could get a little bit of distance from Piggy. And yet there was this huge room to where you have to place in a certain code that you have to find. And there was also a little bit of event section that has a little monster inside to, to stop campers for camping an event. I like that idea so much. But given this map is a finale, the part 2 of this map is pretty much the same thing, but except it's not. It's actually the same thing. It's basically just previous chapters split into 4 parts that you have to get items, and you have to give them to Tigry or Willow, and yet you beat the map just like that. Number 2, Owlies. Now, as a starter map, I think this is a great and actually a phenomenal start to how the other maps are going to feel like. Once Owlies was released, I thought that this was going to be the actual second chapter to how everything else is going to fold down as regarding to other maps. Now, Owlies is just so cool. Like, there are multiple buildings that you can go in. I just love exploring through the little alley streets, actually going into the little hotel room. Actually, I was kind of disappointed that we couldn't go through that little door over there, but given that that's a flashback chapter, we're not going to count that. But other than that, there's just a little bit downside. Once you get to the end, there is actually this is actually the only map that has a lot of backtracking to do. Like, you have to go so far or it depends of where you place the previous items, since you do have to use the item twice, which is actually pretty cool for a chapter 1 map. It really gives off that little bit of a difficulty. This shows that Minitoon was not playing around with difficulties, like they were showing you to where how the other maps are going to unfold. Number 1, Factory. I don't know what to say. It's Factory, you know. Now Factory is, in my opinion, it's actually one of, I believe that Factory is the biggest map in Piggy ever. Like there are 3 huge buildings that you can go through, and yet there are just really interconnected rooms and hallways that you can go through, which is so cool. But for balance wise, I'll really say it's hit or miss actually, since there's this big outside area with a huge field with a lot of sidewalks and bridges. There's just so much you can do and so many places you can go. But the way to actually escape this map is pretty different, since you don't have to use a key to unlock a final door. You just have to give the swords to Pony, and yet he hits Willow. I think he only has to hit Willow 3 times and then the exit door opens for you. That is actually pretty different. Honestly, I thought Factory was going to be the finale, but that would have been very disappointing. Luckily it didn't. But other than that, I just love how freaking awesome this map really truly is. And there we go. That is every main Piggy map that I have rated. If you guys want me to rank anything else compared to other Roblox games, feel free to leave a comment down below. Now, I'm just going to talk about Piggy for a quick second. I think Piggy is a very well and established game. It really deserves the amount of players that it gets right now. And for the maps itself, I do like how they progressed. I really like that. Especially for Book 2, I really like how they just leveled up when it comes to design of other maps. But playing all these other maps was like a journey, literally a journey. But I really did enjoy it. I really hope you guys enjoy me ranking these Piggy maps as well. I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and take it easy out there, my brothers and sisters.